Tom, first of all, how are you?
I'm very well, actually. Yes, I mean, I don't know whether you're the same in the Netherlands, but we're experiencing a heat wave here for the second time this summer, which is in some ways nice. It's enjoyable to be outside and enjoying the summer, but also slightly disconcerting in terms of I suppose, confirming anxieties about climate change and those kind of things. So yes, I hope we can do something about it, because it's definitely beginning to become a bit of a concern.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on it? Is it something that can be turned around?
Well, I don't think it can be turned around necessarily. I think at least that's from the science that I've read. I think it's unlikely that we could turn it back round, although actually not inconceivable by all accounts. But I think it's just arresting it, isn't it? It's whether we can all be convinced in time that we need to do sort of some more sort of substantial, serious things to change the way we all live our lives. And I think that's very hard, isn't it? Because it's still incremental, even though these things seem to be happening. It's still happening gradually. And so the notion that we suddenly put the brakes on and we all stop flying and we all stop, taking petrol cars everywhere and, make really big changes to our lives, that seems almost so like something that we're not really that ready to do yet, even though actually, by the sounds of it, we need to be doing it. So my view is that we need our governments just to tell us and regulate the hell out of everything, so that we're just forced into it, because I think that's the only way anything's ever going to really change. But yeah, I suppose we just got to talk about it and hope something budges at some point.
Yeah, I think, well, over here, for example, we are building a house now, my wife and I, and 4 kids, of course, and we aren't allowed to use gas anymore. So
Right.
we have to do it. So I think in that way, some measurements are already being taken, but I think, well, when will it be in effect? Maybe within 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I think maybe a nice bridge to Midpoint.
Yeah, sure.
I wrote down some lyrics, and I think, well, it's a nice story that you are telling on this album. I can see the finish now, over half the way back down. Maybe that line sums up what state you're in now, and what in what mood this album has been made.
Well, I think that's been the thing that has really sharpened my focus over the last sort of few years, and brought up a lot of questions for me as a person. This sense that, oh, hang on, I'm not 21 anymore, and I'm not kind of going sort of all guns blazing in a certain direction, which is what I think your tendency when you're younger is, to think in those terms and to think that you're immortal. And then suddenly you reach a certain point in life, and, it's almost, I feel like these questions started to come quite suddenly. It wasn't a particularly gradual thing. Suddenly I started to look at my life and think, wow, there's probably more than half a life behind me. And there's so much there that is kind of been done already. And there's so many adjustments that I then need to make in terms of how I'm going to be going forwards in my life now. I have to have different hopes and different aspirations, and a different attitude to living, I suppose. And it's all colored by that sense of realization that life isn't going to go on forever. And, yeah, when I say I'm sort of, I'm over half the way back down, I kind of do sense that, and also the sort of downness of it. There is a sense of, you kind of peaked, and now you've got to prepare yourself for the second half, which ends in the inevitable.
2 questions based upon your answer. The first thing you said, well, it came suddenly. Did it something have to do with the birth of your son, or something else, or?
I don't really know whether it was that. I think, well, that may have been part of it. I mean, those things are obviously, inevitably, those things are going to change the way that you view yourself and you view your life, right? I mean, as soon as you've got children, you realize that you're no longer the center of your own universe. There's someone else there that's more important than you are, really, and has to be looked after, and requires your it requires you to be available emotionally, physically, geographically. And so, yes, and also I think it just on a more sort of philosophical level, it's kind of that sense of, oh, actually, now I'm handing over, you know, the responsibility of kind of growing and being a kind of young, thrusting individual to the next generation, because it's not me anymore, and I can see it in front of me. There are my kids. They're doing that right now. So that, yeah, I'm sure that definitely has an influence. And you know, Gabriel, our boy, is our second kid, and that's probably confirmed that even more. And certainly more, you know, it's more stressful and it's more time taken up, and it's harder to do the things, more selfish things that I enjoy. Yeah. But you know, it's a sacrifice that you make when you have kids, isn't it? So there's that. But I think it's, I mean, honestly, I just think it's an age thing. I think it just, I feel like, and I get this from talking to people, that this is just a thing that happens when you reach a certain age. It's like you inevitably start to ask a whole load of new questions. And I think one of the things I tried to explore in the album is this sense of how those, when those questions arise in your life, you know, I think it boils down really to one thing, which is, am I happy with what I've got? You know, with this little mini empire that I've built up, am I content with that? Or do I want to change that? And I suppose the changing of that is a sliding scale, right? So, you know, it could be as simple as, oh, I'm just going to get a fast car. You know, these are the cliches, but there are cliches for a reason. I'm just going to get a kind of sports car and have a mini midlife crisis like that. Or, you know, along that sliding scale, it gets kind of more and more serious and the fallout gets greater. So it could be, I'm going to leave my partner and strike up with someone new, someone kind of fresh and exciting, I don't know, you know, who I've not been with for 20 years. Or, I mean, even, and this is certainly the case for a lot of men, I think, you know, a lot of men, and it's a frightening statistic, but, you know, the biggest killer in men of my age and, you know, the sort of little world I'm writing on, the biggest killer is suicide, you know, so that there is this sort of sliding scale of decisions that people make to change where they're at and to tear it all down. But saying that, it's quite possible not to change anything. It's quite possible, I think, to ask yourself those questions and to experience the anxiety and the fear that those questions bring about, but to work through it and to come out the other side and feel liberated. Feel, well, I'm happy with what I've got. You know, I'm happy with myself and with my family and the stability and the solidity of that. You know, so it's, I found it a very interesting part of life to write about, and I think it's full of really fascinating questions.
Yeah, there's one thing that I think that sums up what you just discussed, and I was thinking, well, how did you went through that? Is Stars Align? I think I personally really like that song. All my life, I was always going somewhere. When I got there, I would long for somewhere else. Yeah. When did you came to this realization? And then apart from that, when did you decide, well, no, I have to be happy with what I have now? So first of all, when did you actually, well, knew for yourself that this was the case, that you were always longing for something else? You always longing, but longing isn't good because it's always something somewhere else is better. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's that sense of restlessness that you think, oh, just round the corner is happiness and everything's going to fall into place if I just keep moving forwards. And of course, that's an illusion, right? I mean, that never happens. happens. Life is never like that. It's always a process. You might have brief moments where you feel that, but it doesn't last. It's ephemeral, I guess. And that's something I think that's something you learn as you get older. I've certainly learned it through getting older and through lots of therapy. I mean, I think partly in the first part of my life, part of the reason I was always looking and searching was I wasn't very happy. I wasn't very happy with myself. And that restlessness to kind of find a fix in something external, right? So it's always like, it was things like kind of material possessions or, money or adoration. Certainly, I mean, you could argue that being in a band and being the front man is a very unhappy cry for help, right? I mean, it's you're looking for the biggest stage you can to be loved and to be adored, and sort of on an unconscious level, I can see why so many singers end up singing, and why they also end up so unhappy, because they realize that it doesn't bring the satisfaction and the solution to their problems. So for me, the fix and the solution to the unhappiness was an inward journey, not an outward journey. I suppose that's what Stars Align is saying. It's saying it's about the inward journey. It's about learning to just be happy or acknowledge the moment that you're in, and also to be spontaneous. Like, I think the more that I mean, I agree with you. I think it's one of my favorite lyrics, that whole song, the lyrics to that song, one of my favorite parts of the record. Because I think it's also saying, it's important to be spontaneous. Like, I think sometimes people have, a 5-year plan or a sort of a set of goals about where they want to be in by this time. I want to be there, and I want to have this, and I want to have that. And again, I think those kind of expectations, whilst they can occasionally be helpful, generally are going to end in disappointment, because that getting to that place inevitably often that's not when you suddenly realize you're happy, right?
What was for you what were you longing for? What was the emptiness inside that you needed to fix? Where did that stem from? Did you know?
Well, I mean, I think it's all tied in with my addiction, and I think it stems back to probably to my teenage years. I think that's when the unhappiness really began. So I think the unhappiness began then. I was very self-conscious as a teenager, and that didn't leave me for a long time. I felt very unhappy about the way I looked. I felt, I think I felt like I didn't fit in with the world that I was living in. Like, for example, I was at a kind of very macho male boys' private school, boarding school. And I think it was totally the wrong place for me, because I felt like a kind of sensitive, quite, effeminate teenager. And it's sort of, and I felt like I really struggled in that environment. And I think it set off a kind of a chain reaction in me. And that sort of stayed there for many years. I mean, it's still, there are still remnants of it now. Of course, it's never going to be something you completely get over. Although I think years of really very good therapy have helped. But I also think, part of the problem was I also wasn't really equipped to deal with that stuff emotionally, and I think that begins much younger, right? I think when you're a child, it's down to the way that your feelings are acknowledged as a kid. I think my parents were of a different generation. I don't blame them for an instant. It's the way that they were brought up, and I think they had an attitude of, I suppose, trying to just gloss over or brush under the carpet things that felt, as it were, negative emotions, sadness, anxiety, anger. Those were best just, brushed aside. whereas if things were happy and good and you were feeling jolly, that was all good. That was fine. You know, that could be celebrated. But, you know, I think it's something I've learned with my own children. You know, really have to acknowledge the full range of their emotional worlds so that they understand that there's nothing wrong with feeling unhappy or feeling sad or feeling angry. You know, it's just part of life. So I think, yes, the combination of the way I felt as a teenager coupled with the way that I was brought up, I think it was a kind of very dangerous kind of cocktail and a recipe for disaster later on in life. And as it turned out, you know, I wasn't able to cope. And in fact, getting famous and successful in the way that we did after Hopes and Fears, it just made it even worse. It exacerbated all of those problems.
Yeah, because you have to be in a macho male world, and you get adoration, but not for who you are, but for people, well, what people think who you are. So
yes, of course, they're projecting who they think you are, and of course, that's often not what you are.
There's one thing that stars align before the song actually starts. Someone says, I don't know if it's you or someone else says, "Trust yourself."
Yeah. So that was Ethan Johns, who produced the record. He's actually playing the acoustic guitar on that song. And, you know, it's interesting. We wanted to keep that in there because, firstly, I wanted to always be showing that the record was made, it was cut live, right? It was basically, you know, we would get each song, we would get in the studio, all the musicians together, and we would play it. And we would play through the songs 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And then we'd listen back to them all and we decide which ones we like the most. And maybe we'd cut 2 or 3 together, but, you know, often it was just one take that we felt had a real energy and beauty to it. And so, you know, there's that sense of liveness in the record and warmth and honesty and the interplay between the musicians, which I think is very rare these days. The records don't get made like that. So, but Ethan he's a big proponent of that way of doing things. And he's like an outsider because of it. You know, he's known for it, but people are very scared to work with him, I reckon, because of that. But I think if you've reached a certain point where you feel like you trust your own abilities enough and the songs enough, then it's a way of making records that is thrilling and really exciting.
But to trust yourself, is it for him? Does he say it to himself or does he say it to you?
No, I think we were probably just talking about, you know, trying to keep in time with each other or something like that. But and so to finish answering that question, yes, trust yourself. I mean, part of the reason we kept it in, I was like, we've got to keep that in because that's what the song is about. Yeah. The song is saying trust yourself. But actually, we were talking more about just the practicalities of playing, I think, when he said it.
Yeah, but it's a nice intro because, especially like you were saying, because of the lyrics too. And there are a bit of electro. I don't know how you describe it, but there are some sorts of electronic bits and pieces. Was it done on purpose by you or by Ethan? Or
there's little bits of electronica here and there. I mean, they're all, you know, little drum pads or drum machines. We used there's a Mellotron synth that we used quite a lot on the album, which, I mean, it's a very rare case where the samples on it are so good that you really can't tell the difference between that and the original Mellotron. And so yes, so we use that a lot. But yeah, I mean, so really fundamentally the songs were cut live. So the heart of the songs is basically live performance. And then, yes, there are moments when there's bits of electronica there, synths and drum machines. Occasionally Neil Cowley, who played the piano, who's an amazing sort of, he's a classically trained pianist, but he now does a lot of stuff, sort of avant-garde jazz and a lot of kind of ambient music as well. And he fed a lot of his piano sounds through various pedals and stuff. So So it was really interesting. I mean, I think that's one of the things I love about making solo albums, is just getting to meet these people who all have a different view of how things should be done. And obviously when it comes to your own songs and their own interpretation and their own mark that they stamp on what you do. And that's so exciting to work with people like that. I mean, much as I love working in Keane, we know each other and we know what we can do. We not understand the dynamics because we've been doing it for 30 years, you know. But with new people, there's a kind of nervous tension and an excitement about seeing how you're going to react to the way that they play, the way they interpret your music. So it's very exciting doing things like that.
Yeah, there's one lyric that I've listened to the album several times, and once you listen to the album, to a song for the first time, you have to do it twice or 3 or 4 times. But the one song that really triggered me lyric-wise the first time too, and I thought it was really honest and brave. Gonna Run. I left so many lies in a box behind the door. I'm afraid they are going to break out and pin me to the floor. And I was thinking, to write this, do you have a lot of secrets?
Well, in a way, yes, I suppose I do. I mean, I think the thing about that song is, you know, my life is pretty good now.
Yeah.
And things are in reasonable balance and harmony. But the great fear is that things are going to come from my past.
Yeah.
I was a drug addict for a long time. So there's stuff I've done that I really regret, and just ways in which I treated people, especially, that I feel great sadness about. And and I think when you live with that stuff, however much you've processed it, however much you've apologized to people, or you've tried to deal with it in therapy, it's still there. And I suppose the feeling that I'm trying to convey in that song is that I always feel like I can never quite relax, because at some point that stuff either comes back to haunt you just emotionally, whatever. It's always there. It's always, but there's also a sense of, I'm just luckily, making it through my life now, being this balanced and happy for the most part, but it's something's going to come along and destroy it and undermine it.
But did you think about writing this song? I mean, lyric-wise, did you think about, well, maybe it's too honest, maybe opening the door, maybe, I don't know. Is it something that
maybe
that you discussed with yourself? Maybe, well, should I do this, or?
I don't know, really. I don't think so. Okay. I mean, this is the great thing about having had so much therapy, I think, is that I'm not really afraid of being a human being anymore. And what I mean by that is, I know that I've made mistakes and I know I've done stupid stuff in my life, but I also don't think I'm a bad person just because of those things. That's but I think, and I also know that that's the same for everyone, right? I think everyone lives with that stuff. Nobody is perfect. Everyone has a dark side and a darkness within them that I think has to just be acknowledged, right? And so and I think that's what I've learned more and more over the years, that it's okay to acknowledge that and to accept that that's just part of the human condition. And so that, when it comes to writing songs that might touch on that subject of shame and regret and guilt, I think it's fine. It's just okay to put it all out there. It seems to me like the narrative in our world is changing as well. Like that, those kind of things were much more stigmatized, even like 10 or 15 years ago. I think there's gradually been a shift in trying to accept our frailties more as human beings.
No, but the thing is, if you because you were saying it's always something that comes to haunt you, and like I said, I'm afraid they're going to break out and pin me to the floor. Can you relax a bit more? Have you feel totally at ease with with the road that you've traveled now?
That's a very good question. I think for the time being, I feel like I don't actually know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I really don't. I mean, well, I feel like the road I've traveled has made for a very interesting life so far.
Yeah.
It's given me lots to, I mean, it's, for example, people say about addiction, you know, they say, oh, would you rather have never been an addict? And the honest truth is that I would much rather have been an addict and have got well from it, because I think the experience of going through it forced me to learn about myself in a much deeper way than I ever would have done. And it also, I think, probably gave me a degree of humility that I would otherwise not ever have had. So I think, you know, I suppose we are our stories, we are our experiences. Yeah. And I mean, well, like I said earlier on, I do feel like my life is more in balance now. It's not perfect, and it's not like I sort of live every day kind of full of joy and stress-free and all of that, you know. And things can definitely trigger me and make me unhappy, but I'm definitely better at coping with that. I cope with it in a more measured and realistic way. So I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
But I will end this interview, because I have to stop now, with maybe a quote, and with maybe someone is really special for you. The last song, Overshoot. When the ship goes down, we'll be hand in hand. You know every inch of this record soul.
Yeah.
I think it's about your wife, right?
Sure, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things that triggers a midlife crisis, right? For people, they get married and they have kids, and it's a lot to tie yourself to, isn't it? It's like a kind of, you know, you're in for the long run with that. Right? You know, there's a lot of responsibilities there.
I know.
Yeah, and so I suppose, and I think that can be very scary. Like, I think you can, I mean, this is what we talked about at the beginning. It's like suddenly you can think to yourself, oh my God, is that what I really want for the rest of my life? Especially because I still got a chance to tear it all down and start again. You know, I could do that. That is still possible. But I think, yeah, what I realized is, like, you know, or at least so far have realized, is that those ties are so deep and they're so important. And it's so important for me to be responsible for my kids and to be there for my wife, and, you know, to have this little, you know, put it this way, this little world, this little bubble that we've created, to kind of burst that or to tear it down comes at a heavy, heavy cost. There's a seductive world out there of, you know, starting up with someone new or moving to Australia, or do you know what I mean? There's all sorts of things that feel quite appealing, especially when you're stressed out, you know, when it feels like this has been the same thing for years and years. You know, I can understand people's desire to break away from that. And so, yes, that's what the song is about. It's like, it's about it's about entertaining that as an idea, but then also realizing that actually I know the cost of tearing that down. I've seen it in other people. I don't want to go there. And I also hope that if we can get through this little patch in our lives where we are tested in this way, that it makes us stronger. And, you know, that idea of when we reach the end, you know, to still be together and to have shared it and to have that connection still would be a very fine thing, you know, and quite a rare thing, you know, it feels like in this day and age. So many relationships don't seem to last. So I think, yeah, it's a song of hope, but also a song of kind of realization about the importance of each other, you know, in our lives. So yeah, so I feel like it was a great way of signing the record off. It is probably I feel like it's kind of the best love song I've ever written. So yeah, it felt like
it's a love song with depth. You know, it's a love song with yeah, it's not a love song that you write when you're 18 years old.
No,
So,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And because I have to stop now, and if you are tempted every now and then just think about the line that you wrote in Rise and Fall. I've grown tired of chasing the highlight.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know what it's like to live with those kind of, big highs and lows.
Yeah.
And it's a ride. It's a big, fast roller coaster ride. But I've done that now. My nerves are too frazzled to get back on that roller coaster. I'd much rather live, bobbing up and down on a nice calm ocean, than being on a white knuckle ride.
Yeah. I have to stop now, Tom. Thank you for your time.
Martin, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Yes,
Yeah.
thank
Nice
you.